Hello folks, this is Steve AB for you. You know that recently hurricane and then tropical storm and then tropical depression visited the east coast of the United States. And I showed you what the deep river looked like at crest, maximum height. It was still raining. All right, now I'm going to do a quick thing, and you may or may not be familiar with the U.S. government facility, cooperative facility I'm going to point out to you. The Deep River is a part of the Cape Fear River Basin. There's another river in this part of North Carolina called the Haw River, H-A-W. It is also a part of the Cape Fear River Basin. And when those two rivers join, it becomes the Cape Fear River, which runs all the way to the Wilmington, North Carolina vicinity and south to the Atlantic Ocean. So when you throw something off the bridge there in Franklinville, eventually it can get to the Atlantic Ocean. I want to use this Wikipedia map. Map showing the Cape Fear River drainage basin. Now I'm going to repeat what I just said a moment ago. 2 miles away down there in Franklinville, or about 2 miles down there in Cedar Falls, which is a little upriver from Franklinville, or down to Ramseur, which is a little further downriver. This is where the Deep River runs near me. It begins up to the west of Greensboro, and Shazam, if you look at the map, you'll see that the Haw River originates in the same neighborhood. Now, right about here, where I'm doing with the plus sign there, right there in the middle of Randolph County is where we are right now. Okay? Just orienting you. So it's easy to tell where we are. The first thing I'm going to do is show you something way up here at the beginning of the Deep River. And I'm going to show you a couple of points. Now I want you to look and see how long the Deep River is before it gets to here. That place right there is called Moncure, M-O-N-C-U-R-E. And the Haw River, which starts up here, in a way is about the same total distance to get to Moncure. Moncure was where General Cornwallis and his British Army and mercenaries got in boats and crossed the Deep River and here, and eventually ended up at a stalemate battle at Guilford Courthouse, which is now Greensboro, before he decided to go all the way back down here, get on a boat, and go to Virginia and lose the war to General Washington. So actually, the Cape Fear River Basin truly does figure into the North Carolina campaign. It's not the only part during the American Revolutionary War. Now, DebbY came through here. You've seen my videos at Cedar Falls and Franklinville. You saw how high it crested. We had a storm in January. The crest at Franklinville was approximately the same height. So that gives you a feeling that the storms dropped about the same amount of water. Now what I'm going to show you is a couple of things. How did the rainstorms from DebbY affect the Deep River and its drainage area versus the Haw River and a little further down? Now, U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, has a website for North Carolina. They have it for all the states. Over in Ramseur, I know where it is, over in Ramseur, there's a gauge that reports by way of satellite transmission the current state of the Deep River at Ramseur. How much water flow in cubic feet per minute or whatever, and what's the height. North Carolina's got a lot of them, okay? And North Carolina has a lot of river systems. North Carolina is really beautiful. Now, we're interested in the Deep River to start with. So I have to look for it. Oh, here's the Deep River. I'll make it bigger. Now, what were the two places I mentioned? Where does the Deep River begin? Near northwest of Greensboro. And where does it become a part of the Cape Fear River per se? Moncure. And what's a place in between that I showed you? The Deep River at Ramseur. Now look at this first one. East Fork, Deep River near High Point. High Point is immediately the sister city west of Greensboro. And just south of Greensboro, the Deep River is actually Randleman Lake. There's no need for a gauge on Randleman Lake. That's for drinking water for Greensboro. But it was one of the northernmost branches of the Deep River. But now it's a lake. But the East Fork, now what do? We open it in a new tab. This is at the very top of the Deep River. And can you tell when DebbY came through? Look at the shape of it. Now, it obviously overflowed its banks. That's what that line means. Getting close to overflowing its banks, meaning getting onto roads or getting onto the bridge surface. There was a rain event, and then there was another one, and we're talking up near Greensboro. And you can see that the water rose very quickly. It was a huge downpour. Yes, it was. But then it tapered off, so that was during the 8th to 9th, 1 day span. 1 day span, August 8th. And then something happened here on the 10th for a short period of time. That spike, what was that? Was that a dam release? There's no dam up there. That was another passing hard storm, dropping a lot of rain, and then going away. Now, I'm pointing these out for a reason. When we look back here, you notice that there's only a few places. Now, let's look at the way it says. Deep River at Ramseur. So the gauge is actually in the Deep River. I showed you the video of what it looked like. Is that the same shape as up near Greensboro? It's the same time scale. Why did the shape change? Because between Greensboro and here, there's a lot of creeks, small creeks, that feed it. Below Randleman Lake. Below Randleman Lake. Randleman Lake is full, and it had to release water too. As a matter of fact, they began releasing water from Randleman Lake during the week before DebBY was to arrive. You won't see that because I said a week before. So at Ramseur, which is about 4 miles that way, it looks different. And that's because there's other people feeding it. But notice the shape. Notice this one right here on the 10th. That rain event in this area wasn't that big a deal. The rain event was more concentrated up near the, do you see the difference between the two of them? And this is broader without a deep, because there's all these creeks that got rained on in between Greensboro and Ramseur, about 30 miles. But there's something funny about the this here. Then we see Rocky River twice near Siler City, which is 20 miles that way. This is Ramseur, and that's Siler City right there. And that's where the Rocky River joins it. But they don't have a gauge on the Deep River. They're more interested in what's happening on the Rocky River that joins near Siler. I've fished all of that. Yeah, I have fished the Rocky River. I know these places. And then there's something down at Vernon Springs, and then the only other place where the gauge is directly on the river is at Moncure, which I mentioned to you. And it's just before it joins the Haw River. It's not right where they join. Now look at the curve. We can see on the 8th we have, but look at this, look at this. So that long run down to Moncure, it went up over the red line. That means there were a lot of small creeks feeding it. And if I were to show you a local map, the Deep River wanders and wanders and wanders and wanders. There's all kinds of farmland all along it in woods, forests. And it's got a lot of small creeks feeding it all the way along. But none of those creeks are long running. How do I know? Because I've fished most of them. Now, why don't we take a look at the Haw River, which is, as you can see, starts in almost the same neighborhood. When I first saw that on the map, I almost couldn't believe it. It's like a couple of miles difference between the origins of the two rivers. Now you notice that there were only 3 places where on the Deep River, as long as it is, where the gauge is actually on the Deep River. Let's look at this again. Now we've got to find the Haw River. Oh, it's right there. Why would it has nothing to do with alphabetical order. It has to do with the fact, look at how many entries there are. If I said there are a lot of little creeks feeding the Deep River, what does this say about the Haw River? It says it's Buffalo Creek, Westover Terrace. Oh, but this is through a big populated area. This was a big populated area even in the Revolutionary War. But what we have is Brush Creek. We have, I'm looking for a particular one. Oh, here we go. North Buffalo Creek at Church Street in Greensboro. Now, I picked on this one for a reason. It's right near the hospital where I go for my heart doctor. Yeah, I drive 30 miles north, and that's right near. And, oh, is there a river right there? Yes, there is. So let's look at the North Buffalo Creek. In Greensboro. This looks a lot like what the very origin of the Haw River looks like. And it's a creek that feeds into the Haw River. Notice the characteristic. So the very northern part of the Haw River above Greensboro looks like a small river. And we can tell that by looking at Buffalo Creek. And it's got the same shape. And we can tell that the rain event in Greensboro was even stronger than a few miles to the northwest, at the very source of the Deep River. You see it? Let's go downriver. There's an awful lot of stations along the way, and they follow these different creeks, and there's a place called Haw River. Now we're looking at the Haw River, and the Haw River is well east of Greensboro, but at about the same level on I-40. I-40 goes to Greensboro and through Haw River, next to Haw River. So if we look at the Haw River, not a creek, but the Haw River itself, by the time it gets there, what does that tell us? There's a lot feeding it by the time it gets there. Now I'm going to tell you something. Like the Deep River, the Haw River is down to bedrock. But compared to the next place I'm going to show you, the Haw River here is not as wide, quite, as the place I'm going to show you that's about 30 miles south. But it's all down to bedrock, like the Deep River is here. See the shape? Can we see the original DebBY? Yes. Can we see the rain event? Yes. Was there another one in this area feeding it? There was another rain event, and it was, okay? But you see the rain event? It has a different shape, but it was pretty strong there, just like it was in Greensboro, but not down here. It's only 30 miles difference. So let's look at another place that's actually on the Haw River. It's one of my favorite places, actually. It's one of my favorite places. When I used to go to my dentist and drive 60 miles, I had to pass through this place. It's called Bynum. Bynum's a really nice place. Haw River near Bynum. It's the Haw River. There's a dam there. Yeah, there was industry there. There's a nice big dam there. Look at how it broadens out. This is the Haw River, 25 to 30 miles north of it. Up to danger, it's at 20 feet. And at Bynum, it only looks like Oh, look, it's only up to about 15 feet. But what did I say about how wide the river is? It's really wide at Bynum. If you made it the same width as at Haw River, the height would actually be somewhat higher. It's carrying the same. Can we see that second rain event? Is that because it rained it there? Or is that because we're seeing the stuff that rained, the second rain event that occurred up and it's peaking? I think it's carrying it down. So wait a minute, let me just go back to the map. This is Randolph County, and Bynum is approximately right there, because 64 runs like this to Raleigh, east-west. See how easy it was for me to figure out where it is? So where's the next stop that we're going to look at? Well, let's think about what I showed. I showed you the deep river just before it joins, and it's at Moncure, and there's another gauge at Moncure, but on the Haw River, just before it joins with the deep river to become the Cape Fear River. So let's find it. So look at all this, all this Haw River stuff. And it says we could look at the average Jordan Lake Dam. By the way, Jordan Lake is closed. Don't bother going there for camping, canoeing, or fishing. Jordan Lake is closed. Why is it closed? Because it's flooded. Remember what I said, that up in Randleman there's a lake on one of the original main branches of the Deep River? Well, for the Haw River, there's a big reservoir now called Jordan Lake. And it's closed because it's flooded. The campgrounds and everything. It's probably not up to the road, but the campgrounds are lower. So what we do is we skip over that. There's a dam, that's what makes the Jordan River, and we go a little further down, and we want to look at the Haw River near Moncure. And we can hardly see. So what does this curve suggest? Does this suggest there's a lot of other things flowing into what's now called the Jordan Lake? But you notice that it doesn't say danger. Do you notice there's no red here? Did you notice there's no red here? Do you see the red, the pink? What did I just tell you? It's all in Jordan Lake. Yeah, the Haw River no Moncure is below, downriver from Jordan Lake. So Jordan Lake is what is preventing this from going red. You think that's intentional? Think of how long this river basin is. If there weren't some kind of flood controls and things along the way, can you imagine what it would be like way downriver after something like DebbY? Can you imagine what it was like in like 200 years ago? So we've exhausted the Haw River, so we need to find the Cape Fear. I wonder where it is. I wonder where it is. Do you think it's anywhere near these two? Oh, the lower Cape Fear River. Oh, no. There it is, the upper Cape Fear River. And Lillington, I've fished there. I can't remember the name. I can't remember the name of, right next to Lillington, there's a small town with a really important law school. At a little college there that people who've got real brains go to get their law degree. So why don't we look at Lillington? The river's very wide there. How do I know? Oh, I fished there. Yeah, I know where it is. I think the Lillington area is beautiful. And I always push them way to the right. So now we're below the junction. And it goes over the red. But it didn't go over the red at Moncure, just above that. So the reason why it's over the red is it has moderated flow from the lower Haw and all of the flow from the Deep River. And the river at Lillington is really wide. So in other words, if it were as narrow as it is in Ramseur, this would be way up. But it isn't a canyon. It's bedrock. Yes, it's bedrock there too. And it's really wide. Do we see that second rain? No, it's just getting drowned out. What we're seeing is the confluence of two large rivers that run as sisters. And then they've got a lake that's a big buffer in there. And it's kind of boring below that, right? Let's look at one more. So we caught it at Lillington. Why don't we go down to Fayetteville? That's pretty far downriver. Let's just take a look at that. Now, I'm only picking gauges that are actually in the river because these others are creeks. In between are creeks that feed it. And there's a lot feeding it by the time it gets down to Fayetteville. And so now it's a big, wide curve. And yeah, the Cape Fear River is pretty wide. And remember what I said? Some of this stuff you have to do like Jordan Lake. I don't know why Jordan Lake was originally created, but I have a feeling it had something to do with flood control down near places like Fayetteville. Because despite even that, with the big reservoir at Jordan Lake right now, which is flooded and closed, and it's a pan. When it gets flooded, it's holding a lot of water. Otherwise, this would be sky high. And as it is, let's just take a look at it. It's peaking at 40 feet. You see what I mean about flooding? I'm not exaggerating about that. When Sherman's army entered North Carolina, headed up sort of toward Greensboro, during the rainy season, in order to move all the wagons, munitions, cannons, and all that stuff, they had to use a log road. They cut trees down and chopped the branches and roots off, and they had logs, and they had a log, let's say a log road that was a half-mile long. And then they were using horses to take the one where they just came over them, and the whole baggage train has got empty logs behind it. They hook onto them, and they drag them to the very front where the front of the wagon train is, and they lay down the logs. And why would they do that? Because it's so damn mushy and muddy in rain season, because a lot of the area near these rivers are like pans. The rivers themselves are down to bedrock, but the rest of the stuff is kind of like farmlands and forests. And if you're trying to go through that in the rainy season and you have to wagon wheels, you'll never get anywhere. I'm trying to give you a feeling for what it's like in North Carolina through the seasons. And so we're looking at the final graph, and yet as high as it is at 44 feet, it's not up to the red line. At Fayetteville. Okay? And then I'm not going to go further down to the Atlantic Ocean. So what I've tried to do is just use DebBY and the rainstorms and what it dropped. And we're looking at two sister rivers. See, here's Fayetteville. You see? And we're not even going to go down and see what happens to the river down here. We got down as far as Fayetteville. Moncure is right there, and this is Fayetteville, and the river is, but nonetheless, it's not over its banks. And part of the reason for that, in my opinion, is Jordan Lake. I don't know why they built Jordan Lake. I know who it's named after. What's the name of the main road in Ramseur 4 miles that way? And what's the name of one of the churches in town? It's got something to do with Senator Jordan. He was born there. That's not where he lived finally, but that's where he was born. And he was a big deal senator in modern North Carolina history. Jordan Lake. Steve AB40 out, just having fun with DebBY. Saying see you in 73.